finally found an online testing, so you couldn't get any appointments out there because things are spiking back up again. So you couldn't get any appointments to get tested. So I finally found something online, you know, and this little kit they put together, this little kit to do it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gail Sanders, Assistant Vice President of Business Development at TAR Federal Credit Union, which is the largest federal credit union in the state of Maryland. We provide our members with a full spectrum of products and services with extremely competitive rates and major emphasis on member service. TAR membership is totally free for companies who would like to offer this wonderful benefit to their employees. So be the office hero and join Tower. For more details about Tower, please check out our information in the exhibitors hall. I look forward to hearing from all of you. And I also want to thank the Howard County Chamber for your support of businesses in the community. And now, as a leadership session sponsor of today's conference, it is my privilege to introduce the next speaker, Patrice Flack, who will lead the session entitled The Circle of Life and Your Action Plan. Mr. Flack recently retired as Vice President Americas Marketing and Communications at Cisco in DC, where she worked for 12 years. In this position, she oversaw all Americas, US, Canada. I'm in the shadows. How's that? Is that better? Better? Thank you. I'll start over. Mr. Flack recently retired as Vice President, Americas Marketing and Communications at Cisco in DC, where she worked for 12 years. In this position, she oversaw all Americas, US, Canada, and Latin America customer segment marketing. Her team of 200+ marketing and communication experts engaged decision makers, influencers, and partners on 3 continents in 44 countries and in 4 languages. Together, the team had responsibility to work with business units and sales teams to make sure they had comprehensive marketing and communication plans in each segment that they represented. Prior to Cisco, she also held strategic positions at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise and Entex Information Services. Her success at Cisco and Hewlett-Packard won her many accolades for her achievements and numerous awards. She has not only been recognized for her business achievements, but also for her contributions to the community. She has held several committee and board positions with organizations such as the National Institute of Health's Children's Inn, the University of Maryland Medical Center, American Red Cross of the National Capital and Greater Chesapeake Region, Maryland Food Bank, and with her alma mater, Clarion University of Pennsylvania. And finally, she has been dedicated to women's issues at Cisco as the executive co-sponsor. Sorry about that. And finally, she has been dedicated to women's issues at Cisco as the executive co-sponsor of the Cisco Connected and the Cisco Empowered Women's Network, as well as the Cisco Global Leadership Program. Since retiring, she continues to lift up young girls and women by mentoring and sponsoring young women. Please join me in welcoming this sales, marketing, and communications transformational leader, mentor, and sponsor, Patrice Flack.
Really appreciate it. So, who is ready to spend an hour with me? I always love this time of day. It's that lunch hangover. And I think what I have on is my mic. So we are good. All right. All right, everybody. So hopefully right now you can see my slides, and we're going to put them in slide mode. We're going to talk about leading your life. I don't know about you, but there are times that I feel like I got the life, like I can handle whatever life brings me. And there are many times I feel like life is handling me. So our goal right now for this particular session is for you and us to spend some time together and either cultivate or refine your plan, your action plan, or actually start building one. So this is the Equip Leadership session. So I want to make sure you're in the right one and you don't want to miss this. So as I was preparing for this session, I was trying to think, what were the lessons that I learned, both the hard way and the easy way? And the majority of them I learned the hard way. And what I'm going to ask you to do is, this is a no judgment zone. And what I've been able to do is validate this with a lot of people that I've worked with, that they've gone through the same thing. So these are real life experiences. I also think it's important, as you know, bios, you could be anybody in a bio. You could be a size 2 in a bio, or what they read about you. But the reality is, what the bio doesn't tell you is, I grew up in a pretty humble background in Pittsburgh, right outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was a first generation American. My father came over from Italy. My bio also doesn't tell you that the majority of positions, actually all of them except one, I was told I was the youngest, I was the least experienced, I wasn't well connected, I didn't have what it took. But the bio also doesn't tell you the persistence and the belief that I had in myself, or when I didn't, what I did to seek that belief. So we're going to be sharing that with you. I also want to make sure you know, I'm a working mom. I was a working mom. I've been married to my husband for 25 years, and we have 2 daughters, 18 and 20, Morgan and Mia. All right, I told you a little bit about me. What I want to do is learn a little bit about you. So we have 2 polling questions. The first one is, I want to see where you are in your career. Are you in the first 15 years of your career, or are you in 15 plus? So if you can take that poll for me, I would really appreciate it. Do, 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 do. All right. So we have a third of you are in the first 15, and the second 15 is 2/3. All right, great. Next poll question. I want to know where you are in your current work situation. Do you have a job and you're just going through the motions? It is a stepping stone, but it's leading to some of the things that you want bigger. You're pursuing your life passion, or I need to get out. I need to get the hell out of there. So can you tell me what you're doing, where you are in your career? All right, we're going to launch that poll. And this will allow me to shape some of the discussions that we're about to have. All right. Don't forget to submit. There are times I answer it and then I forget to submit. All right, so some people are going through the motions. Half of you are where you want to be and you're not there yet. Some of you, a third of you, are pretty much pursuing your life passions. Congratulations. And some of you are honest and say, I need to get out of there. All right. So let's talk about this. All right. So I'm hoping that whether it was today or you had an opportunity to think about where you want to be. And I love Stephen Covey. Earlier on, he was someone I read a lot of his books. And if you haven't done this visioning work, I think it's so important. And I believe in living eulogies, not eulogies in, okay, I was just wanting to check to make sure we're good. Okay, living eulogies. Why wait to tell someone how awesome they were? So, and why not write your own eulogy? So Stephen Covey, if you Google living eulogies, there's an exercise you have to do, you should do. It's really important because what it does is it says, how do you want to be known? What is it you want to be known for? And what are those particular individuals or people that you are, husband, wife, whatever it is, professional. It's so important because this saying, before you start climbing the ladder of success, you need to make sure that the ladder is against the right building. That's absolutely true. So you need to have some clarity on your vision and what you want to do. So please, if you've done this today, awesome. use this as a guiding post. If you haven't done it, please make sure you spend some time doing it. I'll tell you, I did it when I was in my late 20s and my mid 40s. And it allowed me to make sure that directionally in my early and mid 20s that I was going where I wanted to go. And in my 40s, it allowed me to redirect and recorrect some of the things. All right. So as I was putting this stuff together, the wisdom that I had, I realized that there were probably 3 different pivotal points when I first started in my career, mid-career, and later on in my career. So what I've done is I framed this discussion so that I can make sure that it's easy for you to comprehend some of the things that I learned. And again, this is the school of hard knocks. So let me dive into one of my first realizations is if you're focusing on your career, I really want to make sure that you take a step back and you check a couple things. One is the first pillar, which is you, who you are, what you stand for, how you keep yourself healthy. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. The second pillar of your life is your career. The third pillar of your life is what I call life's paperwork. And that life's paperwork is not coming up. Hold on one second. I'm getting a click. All right. So let me, Mike, if you can come help us, I'm not sure what's going on, but let me just talk a little bit about the 3 pillars. The you, the career, and life's paperwork. The life's paperwork, these are things that they're just not fun to do, but it's making sure your life is in order. And I'll give you some examples of what that means. So that's the first. So lesson number 1 is these are the 3 pillars that I hope you, as a person, as an individual, are focusing and concentrating on. They are interconnected. So if 1 or 2 or 3 of these pillars are firing on all cylinders, consider yourself fortunate and lucky. If they are not, then what I would tell you is that's okay. You can draw the strength from the other pillars in that pillar that maybe is not firing on all cylinders. And you know, when people talk about work-life balance or harmony, you know, this is how you get harmony, is when you focus on these 3 aspects. The other thing that I'm going to do in this presentation, so we'll deep dive in each one of these pillars. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to look at it if you're in the beginning of your career or if you're in later on in your career, mid to later on in your career. And this is just a continuum, and I drew the line the first 15 years and 15 plus years. My ask would be, things can go in between the years, so don't get hung up on that. It was just a way to structure the conversation to ensure that it made sense. And quite frankly, the making sense was the experience and the wisdom that I gained from these lessons. All right, so this is me. She's pretty cute, isn't she? No, not at all. Anyways, this is me with my first Holy Communion. I was 8 years old. And at that point in time, I started to think, what did I want to be when I grew up? And I professed to my parents that I wanted to be a nun. I thought it was really cool. I wanted to be a nun because I hung out with the nuns when I was getting my first Holy Communion. So my mother said to me, okay, good. You want to be a nun? Go follow Sister Bernadette for a day. So follow her and see what you think. Understand why she does what she's doing. And second, what she actually does. So I spent the afternoon with Sister Bernadette and I was all decked out. I didn't wear this outfit, but I was all decked out. And I'm like cared and spent the day with her. So I went home and I said to my parents, I don't want to be a nun. And you know why I didn't want to be a nun? There were 2 reasons. 1, I didn't have the calling. Hello, that's the why. 2, I didn't want to be a nun because I found out they didn't make enough money. So what I learned at 8 years old, my mother started to equip me. She started to teach me or show me how to explore things. I did an informational interview. I shadowed someone. These are really basic skills, right? So we'll talk more about that. At the same time, though, I never dreamed that this little girl was going to retire from corporate America as an executive, running a big patch of business. Never dreamed that. It was pretty cool. I also never dreamed that I would be so consumed at this point in my life in the philanthropic space. But that's what happened. And these are the experiences that I'm going to share with you, and that's my story. Sticking to it, okay? All right, so let me take the first pillar. The first pillar is you. This is all about you. It is, you know, the first 15 years that you have when you first start out in your career. I don't know about you, but all I focused on was me. I wasn't married. I didn't have children. I focused on me. That was the selfish part of me. And you know what? I thought it was okay. My dreams were much bigger. My passions were, I was still developing my passions. You know, my dreams and my passions were relocating from Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C. It was to be in a sales job. It was maybe to work in high tech. I didn't know back then, but I thought I wanted that. And I wanted to travel. I wanted to experience the world. You know, when I was growing up, the big thing for me was to go to Lake Erie for a day. And that was a vacation. Right now, I was going to do it big, and I was going to do it for me. But I also realized later on in my life, the 15 plus years, I also knew the things that I didn't like. And I think it's equally important to know what you like versus what you don't like. I started to learn that I wasn't really good managing little detail. I was much more of a strategic thinker. I was also someone that liked to hang around with positive people. When I found negative people, I didn't want to be around them. So that was okay too, as part of it was just being aware and having that vision of who I wanted to be. The second thing was my reputation or the brand. And I think there was some discussion already, and you've had to have heard about this. Your brand is who you are when you start in the workforce and when you leave the workforce. It goes with you. So please, please, please make sure you do a self-assessment on your beliefs, on your values. That is so important. And if you were in Bernadette's session earlier, I couldn't agree with her more. Because there are so many times in life, you are going to be tested on your value system. Have clarity on what it is and what they are. So for me, as an example, I am such a hard worker. Trust, respect, integrity, those are non-negotiable. You will get that from me, and that's what I expect from everybody else. So please know that, what your beliefs and what your value system are. When you get to that 15 plus mark, your brand is starting to be defined for you, whether it's the skills you acquire, it's the accomplishments you have. Those things will build out your brand. My ask to you is don't have it willy-nilly. Please make sure you're paying attention that if this is what you want to be, are your actions following up with what you say you want to be? Please make sure of that. And by the way, brand is both in person and online. And make sure your beliefs and where you want to be is in sync with how you are showing up. I will also tell you later on in your career, or mid to your career and later, you can also get pigeonholed based on your experiences. So if you're someone that continues to have bigger dreams, make sure that you're expanding your brand so that you don't get pigeonholed. Or if you want to be a subject matter expert in something, it's fine to go deeper into that aspect of the business, but no, that is part of your brand. The third thing I want to discuss is relationships. Earlier on, when I moved to Washington, I was like, woohoo, I'm going to be everybody's friend. I wanted to meet everyone. And guess what? I had the time and I had the energy, right? So I not only met people at work, I met people at church and some of the extracurricular activities that I was doing, some of the clubs that I belonged to. I was meeting everybody because I wanted to be friends with people. And by the way, relationships to me, that's my kryptonite. This is an energy source for me. But I also learned later on in life, or mid to later on in your life, you also don't have the time, maybe not even the energy, because your life becomes fuller. You become more selective of who you're going to build relationships with. and what kind of relationship you want with those people. And that's okay too. My point is just continue to grow and build your network. You never know who you're going to meet and how they'll play out in your life. So two different types of relationships I want to call out is one, from a professional perspective. I started to work with a gentleman by the name of Bruce Klein. He and I were peers. He then started to excel in his career. And I started to excel with him. But what I learned as we started to excel together, and eventually he did catch up, and he actually went further than I did. But what I realized in the relationship that I had with him is he started out as a peer. He grew as my boss. He became a mentor and a sponsor of mine. And he also, ultimately, he and his wife have become lifelong friends with my husband and I. So you never know who you're going to meet. And especially when you meet these people earlier on, you just meet them for who they are, not what they are. And that's an important lesson, because as people move up the leadership ladder or they get more responsibility, you never know who's hooking to your wagon, if it's because of you or if it's because of your title or your position. So it's easier to make friends earlier on. The second thing I'm going to call out as far as relationship is a life partner. And this is one of those things, I got to be honest with you, I wasn't too smart about this. Whether you decide to get married or you want just a partner for life. And when I say I wasn't too smart about this, I actually didn't think about that person beyond the love, right? And that we shared some values and some beliefs. What I have grown to learn about my husband is he's extremely supportive of my career. He's been there through thick and thin in my career and my personal life. He shares in household responsibilities, albeit not as much as I want him to, but he still does. And he's also part of the child rearing. So this was the same guy, I would tell you, my first business trip I went on. I was leaving to California and Morgan was 4 months old. I was a nervous basket case. I had a 7-page document, single space, saying, here's, if she does this, this is what you do. If she does that, this is what you do. As I was getting in my car, he was holding her, he was waving to me, and he said, have a great trip, have fun, honey. And exactly what do I do with her? And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You are asking me this question. I am about to get on a plane and drive fly cross country, and I am scared shitless of what I'm going to come home to. But I want to fast forward 2 years later. He was the guy that potty trained both of our girls within days of being accepted or rejected at preschool. He grew into his job, or his responsibility wasn't a job, but his responsibility. And I would just ask you, as you look at these relationships, those are just two scenarios, but think about making sure that you're meeting and you're networking with people and staying in touch with those people. And I'll talk more about that. Personal time. This is so important. This is how do you make sure you unplug or you recharge yourself and that you take care of yourself. This is your mind, your body, your soul. I don't care if it's going to the gym, if it's going for a walk. I don't care if it's chanting or meditating or reading or painting. You have to take the time to take care of yourself. Because we have a saying in my house, if mom is not happy, no one else is happy. And it is true. Let me tell you, the other night you didn't want to be at dinner with us. But it is so important. For me, earlier on, I was going to the gym because that was part of my social network and I wanted to be a cute little size, right? Later on in life, when I decided to have my children, I was an older parent. So I wanted to be a healthier person. So I also knew that I wasn't motivated. So guess what? I hired a personal trainer to show up at my house 6 a.m. 3 times. I had 2 goals when that woman showed up. One was for her not to ring the doorbell to wake up my family. And 2, it was not to throw up or pass out doing the athletic work that she wanted me to do. But my end goal, again, was to make sure that I was healthy, mentally, physically, and emotionally for my family and for myself. And the last thing, oh, and in that area, I do want to call out one thing is hobbies. Later on, I started out with hobbies, but later on, I did not have hobbies because my life was really full. That's code for hair was on fire. There was everything going on. And to put a puzzle together, to read a book, that was decadent. That was a luxury for me that I didn't have. But I'm going to ask you, especially if you started out having hobbies and later on you don't have those hobbies, just know that hobbies could be put on a shelf and be brought back in when you have the time, because guess what? Your kids aren't always going to need you. Your job might not always be demanding. And when you start to think about that next chapter of your life, sometimes your hobbies actually build those bridges. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is gratitude on this. Again, this is the U pillar. Gratitude. I wasn't grateful for a lot of things early on in my life. I thought I deserved them. I worked really hard. But later on, when I started to realize how precious life was, I started to reflect gratitude two different ways. One is every single day I try to say something I'm thankful for. I don't care if it was the worst day that I had, I try to find something that I'm grateful for. And it might be the fact that that jerk that I sat next to at that meeting, I didn't have to go home to him. I chose someone else. It could be as simple as that. Or in my situation, there were so many people that had supported me through life, through the thicks and the thins. I was so grateful to have them as friends and to have them part of my network. Later on, or midpoint of my life, and towards the end, I sound like I'm going to die. Hopefully I'm not, right? I'm still in the prime of my life, but I'm just trying to tell you roughly when these realizations came. But mid to later on, I was so grateful for what I had and where I came from and the people that supported me. It became so important for me to make sure that I gave back. That I sponsored people, that I mentored people, that I was there for people, that I was there for the hungry, the people that are looking for food, or people that are looking for mental health and needed someone to talk to. Those are really important for me. So as I wrote my living eulogy and I refined my living eulogy, did I make a difference in people's lives and in the community in which I live? Got it? So this is the U pillar. Be selfish. All right, let's talk about, oh, I saw this. I have to tell you this. I saw this the other day and I really thought it was important. I didn't begin to prioritize self-care until I saw precisely how my daughter admired and mimicked my every move. And I realized that self-neglect wasn't the legacy I wanted to pass down to her. I think I heard a little, oof. We all feel that way. So you deserve it. And if anybody tells you otherwise, you tell them to talk to me. I'll take care of them, okay? So we're going to take a step back. We're going to do two polling questions. The first polling question is, just some of the things that I talked about, was there anything that you've already been doing in your plan that you want to think about doing more? And then the second polling question is, what are those one or two things that you want to start doing in the U space? Also, just a reminder, this is part of you building or refining your action plan. So these are just to spark ideas. They might also spark some other ideas. So if you can please think about what are some of those things you'll continue to do, and maybe what's one or two things you want to do. So continue to do. Okay, so a third says clarity. One or two of you say work on brand, investing more time in relationships, taking the time for your body, soul. I have to tell you that is so important, and the gratitude piece. Okay, great. Let's move to the second poll, which is you're not doing any of these. What are the one or two things that you want to make sure that you start introducing into your regime? right, make sure you hit submit. And I'm also going to make sure you write this down or you type it in or you put it on your device. Because I don't know about you, but when I see it in writing, I say it out loud, I put it in my calendar, there's a commitment. All right, good. Taking the time for your body, soul, and mind, it continues to be the top. I'm going to tell you a little trick. Remember that guy, Bruce Klein, I told you about? Guy was the busiest person traveling all over the world. One day I looked at his phone and I saw an appointment, and the appointment said working out. I said, what is that? He said, I put it in my calendar. When I put things in my calendar, I commit to them. And if I don't do it, I feel guilty. So I put it in my calendar. That was a little trick. So guess what? I started to do the exact same thing. So that's just one example. All right, let's move on to the second pillar. Second pillar, this is about your career. First, we talked about you. This is the first 15 years of your career. Make sure that you understand your aspirations, right? What is it that you want to be? Some of them don't have to be baked, right? My aspirations were I wanted to be a successful salesperson. I wanted to lead teams. I wanted to live in Washington, D.C. It was really simple. I called them actually guardrails is what I created. Once I was clear on what I wanted to do, I started to build out a plan. So when I was growing up, building out a work plan or a job plan or career plan, however you want to call it, they said it was 5 to 10 years. Not in the world that we live in anymore. I think it's really 12 to 24 months. You start to build out that plan and then you adjust it over time. So some of the things that I think were really important to make sure that in your plan, so you got your vision, now you're starting to build out your plan, is your particular job. Make sure that you understand whether you have it today or it's new. Understand the expectations of that job. Don't just read a job description. That's only going to tell you maybe a quarter of the story. Make sure you sit down with your boss, your connected teams to understand really what your job entails. Also make sure that you understand how you're going to be measured for performance. What's good, better, and what's great. Make sure that they're telling you the things that they're going to be looking for, because you don't want to wait 6 months or a year into your performance review to find out how you're performing. You really want to make sure that you understand what's expected of you and how they're going to measure success. Once you get that job or you're in that job, make sure you show up and you're all in, especially the first 15 years. Again, you have more time, you have more energy. Be all in. How does that look? For me, it looked where I would go to work early. I would stay late. They would say, you need to do 10 cold calls. I would do 20 cold calls. You need 3 appointments. How'd you like that? You need 3 appointments a day. You need 3 appointments a day. I would do 4 or 5 appointments. Because again, I was starting to establish myself. That was really important. Good enough versus perfection. This is just a behavioral thing that as women, I think we think that we have to be perfect in everything. Give yourself a break. Don't put that additional pressure on yourself. Make sure that you know what has to be perfect. If you have a profession that is saving lives today, I want you to be perfect. But guess what? The majority of us don't. So just know where you should be investing your time, what's good enough versus something that's got to be exceptional or it's got to be perfect. But don't make everything perfect. You're draining your own system, your own energy system. The next thing I want to make sure that you do is you have feedback. Now, feedback is a gift, whether you want it or not. And I always tell people, I do want feedback. I want the feedback in the spirit of getting better. You also, earlier on in my career, every feedback I valued, I said I was going to do, and I worked on, and I treated with equal priority. Not so much later on, and I'll hold that thought for a second. But it's so important to make sure that you get feedback. I don't care if it's from your boss, your peers, your clients, you name it. It's so important because that is the litmus test to say, are you showing up the way you need to be showing up? What might you need to alter? There was a point in time where I was stepping into a very big leadership position. And I did a 360. I did a baseline assessment of how people said that I was showing up. So I was leading a team at this point. but that team was only, I think there was like 20, 25 people. Now I was going to be leading a team of around 300 people. And I knew I had to be conscious about what kind of brand, what was my reputation, how did I want to show up as leader? So I spent time thinking about how I was a leader here and what kind of leader I wanted to be, which was around servant leadership, which is really empowering and building a remarkable team that can achieve unbelievable things. And guess what? Me not getting any of the credit, the team actually getting the credit. So what I did was I got feedback from 15 of my leaders. And I not only took the feedback, so any of you that have done this, right, you get the nice little package, you read it, and then you decide what you're going to do with it. What I did is I did 2 extra things. I sat in front of my team and I shared the feedback. There were 15 people sitting in a circle and I shared the feedback. That is like bearing your soul and your heart without any clothes on. It is not pretty. It is the scariest thing that I had to do. Because guess what? Some of the feedback wasn't kind. Some of it was spot on. So I did that. The other thing that I did was I got clarification about what some of the things were being said to make sure that I understood it. And I also declared with people what I was gonna do and what I wasn't gonna do. So I made a commitment to them, eye to eye. It was the most unbelievably refreshing thing after you do it. Because what I was doing is I was role modeling behavior that I wanted my team to have, my leadership team. So that's important. The next thing is comfort zone stretchers. I have a saying in life, you gotta feel uncomfortable. You gotta feel comfortable being uncomfortable. This is so true. And again, earlier in your career, these types of things need to be put into your plan, which is visibility. Are you showing up, or do people understand what projects you're working on? Do people actually see the type of work that you're doing? Are you sharing that work? Especially now with, you know, all of us being remote. Does your boss actually know what you're doing? Because I will tell you, as women, sometimes we will sit there and we will put our head down and think that if we do our job and we do it really well, people will notice. The answer is not always. So please make sure you're being visible. The second and third thing I'm going to talk about is stretch assignments and shadowing. Stretch assignments are, there's a need in the business and you have an interest and you raise your hand and you say, I want to be on that committee, or I want to be on that team, or I want to take a project on for a problem that we're trying to solve. Those are priceless, because what that allows you to do is roll up your sleeve. It allows you to get deeper into some of the knowledge maybe that you don't have. It allows you to expand your knowledge, meet new people. It's remarkable. I'll tell you, I've done stretch assignments, and one of them that was most memorable was when my boss was trying to build culture in a team. And I said, I'll lead it. So what I did was I tried to assess the culture, what we wanted, what it was, what we wanted it to be, and how we were going to get there. I did that project for her, got visibility as a result of that. But I'll tell you, I did that earlier on in my career. Later on in my career, it became such a big part of who I was as a leader, culture. But again, I just got introduced to it about 10 years earlier by raising my hand for a stretch assignment. Shadowing people. Shadowing people are really important. I don't know about you, but I am a visual learner. I have to see and touch and hear and be a part of to learn. So I would pick people, whether they had jobs that I wanted, or they were the type of leader I wanted, or they had different beliefs or experiences. I would sit down and I would shadow with them. And by the way, I would tell you, you can still do shadowing virtually. It's really important to do. External clubs. This is so important. I, earlier on in my career, put everything into my job. I was affiliated with my company. I loved it. I breathed it. Guess what? The first time your company breaches the contract, it's like a marriage that's gone bad, right? So I thought it was important for me to make sure that I joined professional associations, that I did community work that was attached to some of the causes that my company was affiliated with, that I did public speaking. Because I will tell you, When you go out and you join these clubs, you will learn more, you will grow your network, and you will be more marketable. And at that point in time, if a company does breach your contract, then you know what? You have a wealth of connections that you can tap into, and you have greater value for who you are and what you have to offer. Opportunities and obstacles. Again, there are tons of opportunities that are surrounding you every single day about different types of jobs. And what I'm going to ask you is to please make sure that you are looking and you are aware of those opportunities that present themselves and that you pursue them. Please make sure you do that. There's a confidence factor too that I'm going to call out here as well. The confidence factor is women have a tendency to believe that we have to be 90–95% ready for that next job. Men, on the other hand, maybe 50%, and I'll learn the other 50% on the job. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We should take that cue. We should be doing the same thing, because the majority of the jobs that you have, you won't walk in knowing half of the things you want or need to know for that job. So please, as women, make sure that you have that confidence factor to actually pursue those jobs. I will tell you, every single job except one that I went through, this is where I was told I was the youngest. I didn't have the experience. I didn't have the right network. But I showed up at those interviews prepared. I did my research. I knew I built out a plan of how I was going to attack that business. And I got the jobs. And if I did it, you can do it. Trust me on that one, please. I also have obstacles here, because every obstacle at times can present opportunities. In a particular situation I was involved in, I was on a sales team, and I got involved in a commission dispute on who should be paid for what based on a deal I had landed. And it was ugly, and it got escalated. There were multiple people, and I finally had to sit down with the general manager and have a discussion with him. And for another time, I can give you the details. But at the end of the discussion, the general manager ruled it a different way, not in my favor. But 6 weeks later, I got a phone call from the general manager, and he said, you know, Patrice, I saw how you showed up, and I have a leadership position on my team I'd like for you to interview. And that was code for him to say that he wanted me on his team. And what was a very difficult situation actually turned out to be a pivotal point in the time in my career that changed the trajectory of my career. Guess what? I took the job. And I am so grateful I did. Relationships. So we talked about networking and what it means and all that good stuff. So relationships, mentors, and sponsors and support people. And let me briefly talk about what that looks like. Mentors are people that you want to learn from, right? That they have an attribute, a job, they behave or perform a certain way, and that you want to learn from. Make sure you build mentors into your career plans. And that's something that stays with you, right? It's not just a one and done, meaning you will move mentors in and out of your life. Sponsors are different. Sponsors are people that have seen you in action, seen you through thick and thin. They will put their reputation on the line for you. They are there through whatever you need. These are the people that are talking about you when future opportunities show up, and that you should be considered for those opportunities. Support. This is what I call my girlfriend network. For me, these are people that aren't mentors, they're not sponsors, they're not colleagues. These are people that I admire and that typically have been ahead of me in their career, and they've been able to do it wildly successful. And I have a lot of support people in the working mom. And the working mom for me was really important, because everything was catastrophic when I first decided to have children and raising children, the first of everything. Guess what? I attached myself and created a support system of working moms, so that when I was going through those difficult times, I had someone that I could turn to. And typically 9 times out of 10, they were like, been there, done that, here's what I did, boom, let's move on. Pretty cool. So this is the first 15 years of your professional career. I will tell you the evolution you will then learn. If you're earlier on, you start, based on your experiences, things will progress for you. I want you to continue to make sure you're reevaluating your brand and your action plan. Because now I'm going to talk about the second part of your career. And we, Mike, I think we lost them. Am I doing? All right. The second part of your career. Slides aren't advancing. But let me talk about the second part of the career. Your aspirations and your dreams, sometimes they're not so big, right? Because your life is fuller, it's more complex, more demands. That's okay. That's okay. Give yourself a break. Don't lose your dreams and your aspirations, but make sure that you stage them over time, but know what they are. When I started to revise my plan in the 15 plus years, things that became really important to me were what type of company I worked for, who I worked for, who I worked with, the types of work I was going to be doing, right? So those priorities and those things started to change and morph, and that was okay, and I was able to build upon them. So I built out that plan. All right, built out that plan. Thank you. But again, I just want to tell you, I at times would put more stress on myself than what I needed. I thought I had to do things faster. I thought I had to achieve things sooner. Stage yourself. You got a whole life to do this. So stage yourself what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. Expectations and performance. Remember I talk about you're building out your plan? The expectations and performance. Again, equally as important, make sure you're sitting down with your boss and you understand. But what's also as important is that you are sharing with your boss what you expect from them. And here's what I mean. I would sit down with my bosses, make sure I understood the job. But I would also say, okay, if I'm going to be doing this, this is what I need from you. Whether it was air cover, whether it was additional support, whether it was additional training, whether it was financial, I was expecting certain income levels, whatever it is, please make sure you know your value and that you're sitting down and you're sharing with your boss what you expect from them. Don't let them be the mind reader. The other thing I would tell you, excuse me, is play to your strengths. Remember when I told you that all feedback was equal and I was going to work on everything? I got older and I got smarter. In my 40s, I thought, you know what? I'm about 70% there. The other 30%, yeah, I could still work on it. When I hit 50, there was a rite of passage. I swear to you, I hit 50 and I said, look, it's as good as it gets. So there's only some tweaking that's going to go on, right? There's not going to be this swan, you know, this ugly duck to the swan. No, it is, I am who I am. So make sure you're putting yourself in those situations where you can play to your strengths. Also, if you have some blind spots, I would hire really smart people to surround me around those blind spots, to be a part of the team, not for me to know everything. Guilt versus not guilty. Oh, as working women, do we feel guilty? I'm Italian, Catholic, and a working mom. I'm the triple whammy of guilty, right? Have you ever forgotten the tooth fairy at the house? I have, right? So I would tell you, there were times, I used to feel guilty about everything. If I was at work, I felt guilty about being at work. I should be home. If I'm at home, I should be at work. You know, it's exhausting. So what I would tell you is guilt is a useless emotion. Get rid of it. Work on it. I used my support system to get rid of my working mom guilt. So again, I'm just trying to free you up so you have more energy to focus on your career. Professional and personal boundaries. This is a beaut for me. I think this is really important. So for me, and originally I used to go to work and then I would come home. Now we all work in our house. I created boundaries. When I would walk in, or even when I'm at home working, I make sure I'm in one room. I lock up my phone, I shut my laptop. There is nothing to distract me once I shut that door and I walk out into my house and I spend the evening with my children. Those are the boundaries that I created. I also made sure that my team knew that unless it was catastrophic, They were not to call me. They weren't. I wasn't going to answer the phone. Okay? But I also told my team at the same time, on vacation, don't call me, don't text me, or only text me if it is catastrophic. And I won't do this, and I'll honor that for you. So those are boundaries that I created. Where I started to do the integration was when my kids got older. I started to actually bring my daughters to work with me. They shadowed me. I brought them to leadership conference. Actually today, driving here, I was in the car with my daughter listening to the leadership conference. So I would bring them as well. It was amazing. It's amazing. And they would come to awards banquets, some of the charity work I was doing. It's pretty remarkable for two reasons. One, they see what I do and why I'm not in the house. And two, it opens up their mind to other possibilities. All right, negotiation. Remember I said earlier, know your value? Please, please, please make sure that you know what you are worth. And that could be if you're switching jobs, you're walking away from a particular company to a new company, know what you're walking away from. Know what the salary ranges are. Know what you need to have in the job. Know what the benefits are. Please come prepared for that discussion. And if they don't have the discussion with you, you start the discussion. Because I don't know about you, but that paycheck represents my value, and I don't want to work a bajillion years, right? So make sure you're negotiating. Again, I'm going to call out being a constant learner. Make sure that you are built. I don't care how, actually, the older I've gotten, the less I know. So I make sure that I continually build into my plan, educating myself, experiencing different things, and making sure I'm getting exposure to people and places and things that I want to do. I'm going to skip brand intention because we talked about that. I'm going to talk about calculated risks. There's a reason why we have a jungle gym here. When I first started, I thought I was going to step on that corporate ladder and I was just going to go up. What I didn't realize is you go up, down, and sideways. And when I went sideways and I went down, I knew why I was doing it. It was very personal reasons. It was either I didn't want to work for the person, it wasn't the right type of job, it was I was starting a new family, you name it. But I made those decisions with the best information I had. What I'm going to ask you is, it's okay to take step backs. It's okay to go sideways, because more than likely, you need to maybe do that for a period of time. And I could promise you, if you put your foot back on the gas, it will take off. Here's what I learned is, I think the most important thing that I learned when I did this is going back to the person when you decide you don't want the job or you don't want to pursue the opportunity. So my wisdom I would tell you is, I was really clear on 2 or 3 reasons why I didn't want the job. And I made sure that I kept the door open, that this was a point in time and it wasn't the only point in time, right? So I would ask you that as you go back and you close that loop, if you decide to go sideways or down, 1, make sure that you're clear and that you articulate it, and don't give them too much detail. You don't need to give them too much detail. And 2, that you leave that door open for you. And relationships. I'm a big relationship person, so I will call it out. You will still need mentors and sponsors. And by the way, you'll have more of them in your life. Some of your mentors will turn into sponsors, and some of your sponsors will turn into lifelong friends. I'm going to call out 2 different types of relationships. 1 is the board of directors. These are people in your inner circle. They have seen you through thick and thin. They know your ups, they know your downs, they know what you're good at, and they know what you're bad at. They are connected to you intellectually and emotionally. I use my board of directors when I have to make big decisions, when I have to validate certain things. So I would ask you, who is in your board of directors? And these could be childhood friends, these could be people in your career, these could be people at your church, wherever. Who do you turn to? Because those people are going to tell you what you need to know, not necessarily what you want to hear. The other type of relationship I'm going to mention is the sisterhood. This is simple. Women supporting other women, girls supporting other girls. And let me tell you, this day and age, we need more of that. We need more people in our society, women like us, showing up in leadership positions. I would tell you that the guys do this still much better than we do. They support one another. They promote one another. There have been instances where I have been verbally accosted by women in meetings. And one in particular was a woman. It was about 25 of us sitting around a table, and I was one of two other women sitting there. And she decided to pick a fight with me verbally. And I handled the situation saying, Jackie, clearly there are things that we have some misunderstanding. Let me be able to have an opportunity to understand, not in this meeting, but offline. And then maybe we could start addressing some of this. Lo and behold, two things actually happened. One was I didn't go berserk because I wanted to go berserk on this lady. People noticed the way I was calm and the way I handled that. My exterior was calm, my interior was not calm. But post that, I did spend the time to understand where she was coming from. I worked on some things and I told her some things weren't going to change, and these are the reasons why. She became one of my biggest sponsors. So please know that the sisterhood is so important. And Madeleine Albright has this. There's a special place in hell for women that don't support other women. And I so believe that. We owe it to ourselves and each other to support one another. And the last thing I'm going to talk about on the career is the second act. And that's where I am right now, or that next chapter. Is please make sure you are taking some time to figure out what that might look like. Some of us might go cold turkey and say, no, I'm walking away from this and I'm going to start some other things. I don't know what those other things are yet. Or some of you are starting to build some bridges, or uncovering some of those hobbies or those earlier relationships you had. Please make sure you take some time to think about what that next chapter of your life looks like. You owe it to yourself. All right. Now, from a time check, I know we just have a few minutes. So I'm going to, as opposed to going through the polling, I'm going to ask you just to reflect for just a minute to say, what are those one or two, three things that you are currently doing in your career that you will continue or you will accelerate? And then I'm going to ask you, what are those one or two things that you need to start doing in your career to make sure that you are leading your own career? All right. Thank you. So next, this is the last pillar. And I actually, this is so important. So please don't measure the amount of time that I'm spending on this on how important it is. I don't know about you, but I hate paperwork. If you look at my kitchen table, there's a stack of it, or things that I have to do online, I am not good at. But if I can part any wisdom, the wisdom I would part with you on paperwork is, one, especially if you're earlier in your career, get your finances in order. Start building that muscle. Day one, signed up for a retirement plan in my company. They had matching money. Why not? I didn't want to spend the rest of my life. So why didn't I do that? So that was the first thing I did. Second thing I did was I was always a saver. So I started to save for rainy days. You never know. And boy, don't we know about rainy days right now, right? These are all personal decisions about how much you save and what you save and where you save it. But I would tell you that that is so important. I also knew that I eventually wanted to buy a house. I also knew that I wasn't good on credit management. So when I got my first credit card, I got the lowest credit limit. Like, I started to build this muscle, financial muscle. And I will tell you, that was one of the smartest decisions I did, because guess what? I was working for money, but then I got my money to start working for me. And that afforded me the opportunity to retire in my 50s. So I would tell you, if you haven't started this, I don't care if you're in the beginning of your professional life or you're in the mid or later, you got to do it. This is so important, because what it does is it gives you financial independence and security. You can walk away from whatever job you need to, or personal situation, and feel confident that you can take care of yourself. The second thing that I would tell you is healthcare. Remember I told you the first pillar was you. You are a life athlete. So if you're making sure that mind, body, and spirit is all connected and you're healthy, I hope you've signed up for your health insurance. I hope you are going for your yearly checkups, that you're getting your semi-annual cleaning, your teeth cleaning, you're getting your eye appointments. And I know I sound like a mother, and my girls would be rolling their eyes right now. But again, you have to be healthy, because if you're healthy, then you're able to deal with whatever life brings you. The third thing on the finance that I would bring up is, and I actually had this in the second part of the 15+ years, is your will and your health directive. And you know what? When I was sharing this with one of my friends, she said, honey, we live in a time where it's really clear that people need to know what your wishes are on that rare occasion. So I'm asking you, if you've not prepared a will, if you've not sat down and do a health directive, you can Google it, you can get it online. And by the way, you're affiliated, this network that you're a part of today, a lot of smart people that can help you do this. It is so important for people to know what your requests and your desires and your wishes are. So please make sure that you do that for yourself and for others. The second part, 15+ years, I would say if you started to build that financial muscle earlier on, then as life progresses, you can add things. As we had our daughters and my nieces, we decided to do 529. We decided to do wedding funds. We started to investigate life insurance. So these were things that we had to do or we chose to do earlier on, right? And I think that's really important, because it wasn't like we were trying to do all the finances all at once. It was over a period of time. And then we had to readjust based on what our goals were. And the last two around healthcare, I would say when you decide to leave corporate America or move on, and you need to start thinking about what kind of healthcare do you want? Do you want long-term healthcare, short-term healthcare? What is it that you want? Because you still need to take care of yourself. And the last thing I'll mention is the caregiver plan. I don't know about you, but I'm considered the sandwich generation. This was a generation where my parents, taking care of my parents as well as taking care of my children. It's so important for me to make sure that I understood my parents' will and that I understood what their wishes were. And 5 years ago, I was tested. My father had a non-recoverable stroke. And what should have been the most difficult question, which was, how should we proceed, was the easiest question I could answer, because I knew my father's wishes. So with that, I don't want to end on that, but I want to check in on Q&A and where we were, or what was going on in the chat window.
No question.
I wasn't that good. That's part of, I answered everything. I did not answer everything, but is there any kind of comments that are pulling out any themes?
Yeah, themes where we need to lift each other up, support each other.
There were some themes around lifting each other up, supporting each other, challenging yourselves, being uncomfortable.
Mentors being very important.
Mentors being very important.
A lot of feedback on the body, mind, spirit.
Right, right. It is so key, because I'll tell you, there have been times where I was dragging, I wasn't getting enough sleep, I wasn't taking care of myself. And guess what? I showed up that way too, with my family and my at work. So it's not pretty. And you'd say, you know, who are you? All right. We good? All right. So let me just take a minute and bring it all home. One is, I'm going to ask you again, based on some of the things that I just mentioned, what is it that you will continue to do? And then what is it that you need to do, start doing? And it's never too late. All right. So let me just say, life is a journey and enjoy the trip. And I used to get really irritated when people used to tell me that. I'd be like, I'm all about the destination. Don't get in my way. But I got smarter and I got wiser, and it is about the trip. It's not necessarily about the destination. It's about who you bring along the trip and how healthy you are in that trip, right? So you deserve it. So I would just tell you, just enjoy that trip. And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put my contact information up here really briefly. And I'm going to ask for some feedback. What did you think of the presentation? What would you do differently? What would you add? What would you take away? Because I want to continue to do this in the spirit of getting better and making sure that I am making a difference in my community. If you have any questions, also feel free to reach out and let me know. Okay? Walking the talk. So I just want to remind people that for right now, before you leave this session, that you download your certificate, the CEU credit, and make sure you look in the chat and the Q&A window on the landing page for the landing page link for the next session. And we're going to take a break. And we're going to encourage you to go to the exhibitor hall and browse around, and then come back at 2:20. Thanks, everybody.